Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. We now know who former champion Rhiannon Dixon is going to be facing next month in her super featherweight debut. She's going to be facing the United Kingdom's own Kirsty Hill. It's part of a Matchroom show on a smaller scale than some of their other shows. They haven't abandoned her. They haven't casted her aside.
She's still with them, and they're still with her.
Moving down from 135 down to 130, where by all accounts, Alicia Baumgartner still reigns as that division's undisputed champion, though for how long is the question. Momentarily,
She's still there.
as Rhiannon Dixon attempts to rebuild herself, sporting a professional record of 10 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 11 professional fights.
A former champion.
To Kirsty Hill, who sports a professional record of 7 wins with 2 losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 9 professional bouts. Similar number of fights to Rhiannon Dixon, though not on the same level. 33 years old to Rhiannon Dixon, who is 29. Having last seen action in May of last year opposite the ring former champion Fatuma Zarika, a very experienced fighter. Kirsty won a split decision against her, but that's the only fight she had last year. She was a lot more productive in the previous one, fought 5 times in 2023, but only once in 2024.
She'll be facing Rhiannon Dixon now, who's on the bounce.
Rhiannon Dixon, who last saw action in September of last year, suffered her first professional loss to Terry Harper. She saw action 2 times last year, once in April, then again in September. This will be her first fight of this one. Being honest, these are the kind of fights that she was supposed to have long before she fought for the WBO title and won it. She needed more fights like this against more opponents like Kirsty Hill. Nothing against her, but Kirsty Hill is not as proven at world level as, say, a Terry Harper. Surely you can understand that, but you must also understand that things in women's boxing tend to move faster than they do in men's boxing. It's not uncommon for a fighter with just a handful of fights to be fighting for an alphabet title. In the case of Rhiannon,
This is a fighter with no amateur background, just a few white-collar fights, and only her 9th or 10th fight, she was fighting for a world title, and she was ready to win it, because she did. She just wasn't ready to keep it. There's winning the title, and then there's keeping it. Those are 2 separate things.
it does take a bit more experience and readiness to pile up successful title defenses once you become a champion, more than Rhiannon Dixon had at the time. I would like to see her fight in a couple more fights like this one, assuming she makes it through it, and I think she will.
She's got the right attitude.
And she's talented. She's plenty talented. She just needs more rounds, more experience, and more fights with fighters like Kirsty Hill, who I'm going to give a closer look.
See what she's got.
Look for the ring return of Rhiannon Dixon late next month on the 28th, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
And who's the one in April? Who's the opponent?
Honestly, you want to know?
Yeah.
Who you think I'm going to say? I want you to guess first.
Look, I feel like Loma might be the easiest one because he's a top rank guy.
But we don't know what he want to do, though.
Okay, so he's not the guy. And it can't be Tank because he's fighting in March.
I want to fight Isaac Cruz,
Oh, that man, would be great.
right? I
Oh,
feel like that
Pitbull
would
is the
sell.
man.
I think
Yeah.
that would sell, and I think we'll both make some money off that at the end of the day. I think it makes sense. And, you know, let's be real. Like, you know, Mexicans and African Americans, when we fight, it's always a mega fight.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm saying? And it's respect to that team over there. It's respect over here. So I think, you know, we can make that fight happen.
He probably gave Tank his toughest fight of the last 5 years, and that was on short notice too. Remember, because Romero pulled out, he stepped in.
I
He
remember.
was game.
Yeah, I remember. And Isaac Cruz been making noise ever since then, knocking guys out. Had a tremendous fight. His last fight,
Yeah.
he fought like 2 weeks before me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I called him out on Twitter, and everybody was like backing it, like, yo, focus on Baranchi. But we would love to see that fight. We would love to. So I think that's a Las Vegas fight.
Okay.
And I think, shoot, even after that, depending on when it go, how I feel like it's going to go, you know, we call it pay-per-view after that fight.
Okay.
Keyshawn Davis exceeded my expectations this weekend because I envisioned Dennis Berencic giving him a lot more problems than Gustavo Limos did the fight before that. And he handled Dennis the same way he handled Gustavo. He made it look easy.
And he stopped him. I picked Keyshawn to win a points decision, and he went a step further. So when I envision an Isaac Cruz fight, a fight that stylistically I already didn't think favored Isaac.
Now I'm convinced that Keyshawn would do him bad, man. He'd do him dirty. He'd stop him. He'd knock him out.
Yeah,
The reason
yeah,
for it, Isaac only has one way of fighting a fight, and there's not a whole lot to it. Even among pressure fighters, he really is a simple fighter with not many bells and whistles. Limited by his small stature, he has no choice but to throw those big looping punches, those big haymakers.
It's the only thing he knows.
And it doesn't change depending on who the opponent is. He's going to fight the same fight irrespective of who's opposite the ring. So if you try that with Keyshawn, you try to stand right in front of him and let punches go, he's going to do to you what he did to Gustavo.
He'd do him so bad.
Real bad.
People would question whether or not they should even give Gervonta Davis credit for beating him.
The issue is actually getting Isaac in the ring. He's turned down a good number of fights since he dropped that decision to Gervonta Davis. Oscar De La Hoya offered him $1 million to come over and fight Ryan. He turned it down.
Don't.
He was ordered to fight Shakur Stevenson by the WBC, and he turned that down too. He walked away from that. Some time passes, 1 or 2 years. The Ryan Garcia fight comes back around, except this time it's for more than just $1 million. This time, Turkey's offering to pay for it, and he turned that down too because he wanted to focus on the Angel Fierro fight.
If the kid had half a brain, he would have pulled the plug on the Fierro fight and focused on the Garcia fight.
To see what I'm getting at, this is a guy who's turned down Ryan Garcia not once but twice, and turned down Keyshawn's buddy, Shakur Stevenson. So how's Keyshawn supposed to have better luck than they had? I feel like the kind of money Isaac would want for that fight, Toprank would have to bill it as a pay-per-view without any involvement from Turkey, who's willing to overpay these fighters in excess of what they're worth. Without him,
If Top Rank wanted to do it, Isaac is going to ask for so much money, the only way to do it is to bill it as a pay-per-view, and this, while it's a good fight, it's not pay-per-view worthy.
people are always talking about how Isaac's doing this and Isaac's doing that. He's knocking people out, but you know what he's not doing? He's still not headlining his own shows. He was an undercard fighter before he fought Gervonta, and he's still an undercard fighter now. He's not in a place where he's headlining his own shows, but he thinks he can ask for headline money, main event money.
You're not a main event fighter, and you don't even have your belt anymore.
It's a problem, and it's a part of how Gervonta Davis's reputation as this massive puncher survives, because it's hard to get the guys that he fought in the ring. Yet another fight that I saw some individuals talking about was a fight between Keyshawn Davis and Frank Martin, presumably at 140 pounds, because I don't think Frank is coming back down to 135.
I wouldn't mind that fight, and I think Keyshawn would outclass Frank Martin. I think he'd play with him.
It's another one where I think Keyshawn would beat that guy so bad that people would wonder if they should even give Gervonta Davis credit for fighting him, for beating Frank Martin. I think Keyshawn would do him worse.
It's a little hard to imagine, though, that Keyshawn will be able to get either Isaac Cruz or Frank Martin in the ring in the near future.
The near future. Emphasis on that. In the not-so-distant future, maybe it's a possibility as the well dries up over there at the PBC.
Money dries up, fight dates continue to dry up, and these fighters have to go elsewhere.
For opportunities? Maybe then. Because we haven't seen Frank Martin since that Gervonta Davis fight. And that was way back there in June of last year. It's been that long.
It's been a while, and I haven't heard any rumblings or rumors about Frank Martin's ring return, when that's supposed to be happening.
So maybe not right away, but in the not-so-distant future, those will become potential opponents for Keyshawn. When I anticipate he moves up to 140 pounds, it won't be long now.
He's not going to be at 135 for much longer.
But momentarily, I do not anticipate he will be able to get either Isaac Cruz or Frank Martin in the ring. Not for his next fight. Not in the immediate future. You know what I wouldn't mind? An Edwin De Los Santos fight. If he can stop the Edwin De Los Santos that beat Rayo and made Shakur Stevenson struggle, if he can handle him in good fashion, that's a statement. And I could go for that.
It's a dangerous fight, though.
Not saying it isn't, but in this racket, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Playing it safe communicates nothing to nobody, but you fight a guy like that and you beat him good, that's a message.
Yeah, I would like that. Keyshawn Davis versus Edwin De Los Santos in April. It's ballsy, but I could go for that while he still is at 135.
Like I see a lot of people talking about, okay, you could fight somebody, but if they didn't prove themselves, right, is it worth me fighting them? Because if I do lose, then I risk fucking up my reputation.
Nah, and it's also too, it's like, it's the way how niggas come at you too. Well, like how they come at me too. I don't like that. So it's like me helping them. When I fight a fighter, it's like me helping them.
I get it.
For sure.
I get that.
Like I'm helping them more than they helping me. Like I'm helping them times 5. You know what I'm saying?
Was it anybody you would give a chance to and then they came at you wrong and was like, man, fuck that. I ain't about to give you no shine, no spotlight.
Yeah, there's a couple fighters. Yeah.
Who?
It was just me saying that names is just giving them, you feel me?
No, fuck them. You can help me. Say it on my platform. You can help me.
I mean, it just, I don't know. They gotta prove that so, bro.
Okay, so speaking
now,
of
if I retire and they be like, and I see some shit like some crazy shit, and then they be like, all right, cool, like I
you'll jump back in
the field. Yeah, but it's like, you know.
Gervonta Davis feels that fighters should have to prove themselves in order to earn a fight with him. And you already know where I'm going to go with this. You've heard me say it enough times. This time, why don't you hear it from somebody else?
Like Tank, his whole career, what he been doing was he always asked, why should I fight this guy? Why should I fight that guy? But then he go fight somebody else, and now I can ask a question on why did you fight him? For example, Lamont Roach, he a great fighter, but he at 130, I believe. Why you fighting him? Like, you could have fought Shakur, you could have fought anybody else, but you fought a guy from 130 and just brought him up and just say, yeah, he the one, he deserve a fight. Why? He didn't do anything.
Took the words right out of my mouth. When you choose to fight a Lamont Roach instead of a Shakur Stevenson, the question then becomes, what the hell has Lamont Roach done that Shakur Stevenson hasn't done?
Lose to Jamel Herring?
You know, it's not even a knock on Lamont Roach, but you have to make that comparison that when you willfully choose to fight that guy, you gotta ask that question. What did he do that Teofimo didn't do, that Devin didn't do, that Shakur didn't do? Because you're willfully fighting him, and you just said
They've got to earn it.
they have to prove themselves, and that's where the logic, the would-be logic, becomes illogical. That's where it falls apart.
What did Rolly Romero prove? What did Mario Barrios prove?
Frank Martin. Now Lamont Roach, it's becoming painfully obvious that you're selecting these opponents on some other premise, some other predication. It's not what you're saying it is.
It's because those guys ain't that good.
It's not complicated when you think about it. Those opponent choices already don't make the kind of money that a Devin makes or a Shakur makes.
They're cheaper, so it's easier to screw them over and assert your A-side status over them.
And they're not that good. They're easier to beat. They're the kind of guys that make you look good.
Look better than what you are.
And that's why you choose them over guys like Shakur. It's not what you're saying it is. It's not that they have to prove themselves. None of these guys you're fighting proved anything.
I don't expect the interviewer to be standoffish with him.
Grill him and paint him into a corner. He doesn't want to lose access to the guy. That's the way these things work now.
But when you read in between the lines, that's what isn't being said.
But what needs to be said? And finally, elsewhere in the world of boxing, boxing insider Rick Glacier says, with Top Rank not having a definitive TV streaming platform secured after their ESPN deal ends with their scheduled July 26th boxing event, let's hope Top Rank secures a new deal somewhere, but it most likely would be a smaller deal than currently. Sadly, layoffs at Top Rank could be coming shortly.
Some are reveling in what they interpret as Top Rank meeting the same fate as the PBC on Showtime, that when Showtime decided to leave the sport of boxing, there were a lot of people celebrating that.
So they're interpreting this as payback for all the people that celebrated that. They are now celebrating this, but I wouldn't speak too soon. People over at Brunch Boxing say sources have told them Top Rank and ESPN are set to talk in March, with the ESPN side looking to continue their partnership. ESPN is reportedly open to bringing Top Rank back at a lower annual figure.
This speaks to what Todd Duboff suggested a couple of months ago, that they may have more than one broadcast partner moving forward. Up until this point, it's been ESPN exclusively, but rumor has it they've staged conversations with DAZN, with HBO Max, and now apparently ESPN is still in the running.
It's what the rumor is. It's not hard to believe, because along with the Toprank deal ending this year, the UFC deal is also ending this year. And if you lose them both, what do you have? UFC is said to be going to either Netflix or Amazon, just somewhere over there. And so you figure that if ESPN is set to lose the rights to UFC shows because they can't really afford them, they can't keep them on board, they're going to greener pastures, some of that money that they were spending on the UFC, they might be able to spend on boxing.
They're saying it's going to be a reduced budget, though.
So where before ESPN was providing Toprank with an annual budget in the neighborhood of $80 to $90 million a year, just somewhere in that neighborhood, now it might be 40 to 50, just something like that. That's what I envision.
Which is why they may end up with two broadcasters this year to make up the difference.
Like Todd Duboff specified a couple of months ago, they may have two broadcasters. If you're getting 40 or 50 from ESPN, you make up the difference on DAZN or maybe HBO Max. It's a fluid situation. And thus, you don't want to speak too soon for all those Haymanites that are reveling in what is seemingly ESPN's departure from the sport of boxing. Top Rank really doesn't have to do much to come out better than the PBC did.
They set the bar pretty low.
I've maintained throughout that we didn't know conclusively whether or not ESPN would leave the sport of boxing or would they renegotiate. There was a recent article published at Front Office Sports, but even in that article, it was a rumor. It's just a rumor. It's not confirmed on the ESPN side that they are in fact leaving the sport the way that it was when Showtime left the sport.
When those memos were coming down from the higher-ups at Paramount, you knew what time it was, whereas here, the situation is fluid.
So what that might look like if Top Rank is splitting the rights to their fights between ESPN and some other broadcaster is, you might have Abdullah Mason and Keyshawn Davis and Richard Torres fights on ESPN, and you might have Michaela Mayer,
Emmanuel Navarrete, O'Shaquie Foster on some other broadcaster, some other platform, say DAZN or HBO Max.
That's how it might look. But if what you were thinking is that this heralds the end of Top Rank, then you're not paying attention. They've been around longer than everybody, and if anybody has the know-how to come out of this and land on their feet, it's Top Rank.
Whether you like them or not.
The guy's saying they don't want me and you to believe that they prefer the PBC's overpriced pay-per-views and their way of doing things, so you want to get charged more often within a calendar year just to watch some boxing?
Because they got different ideologies, Top Rank and the PBC. Where Top Rank worked hard to keep as many fights off pay-per-view as possible, the PBC was the opposite.
They wanted everything to be a pay-per-view, and now practically everything is a pay-per-view.
Practically.
And you're saying you prefer this. I'm of the opinion that these individuals don't pay for anything, which is why their perspective doesn't make a lot of sense. You would prefer to be charged $80 several times a year just to watch boxing? Or is it you're only saying that because you don't pay for anything anyway, so you don't see the difference?
They're just a bunch of bums and their opinions don't matter anyway.